I feel a little closer to this story today. I don't know what it is. How many times have we heard a homily or a sermon or whatever on Good Friday about the crucifixion of Jesus, right? That we talk about that all the time, and we all know the story. We all know the pain that Jesus suffered for us. But I'm going to turn a page a little bit. And I want to talk about the spectators that were there today. And there's three types of spectators, right? There was three different types of people that were there present when Jesus was being crucified. The first set of spectators are those who were indifferent or had no faith, right? So they were there just to see the spectacle. They heard that Jesus was going to come back from the dead, and they heard all of the hype that was going around about how what Jesus was teaching, but they didn't believe him. So they went to see. It's kind of like when we were driving down the highway and there's a wreck. I worked at Avondale many years ago, another lifetime ago, and every time I was on the bus and there was a wreck on the side of the road, and there were 20 guys that were still awake in the morning and they saw it, there was 22 different explanations of what happened in that wreck. We tend to look at these things, it tends to draw us when there's something wrong going on, right? We want to look and see. I mean, that's what slows down the traffic all the time. We get all upset because we get stuck in traffic, but everybody's got to turn and look at the wreck. And that's what was happening today. A lot of people came out because these were the same ones that were there on Palm Sunday, laying their palms on the road and their coats and all of this stuff. The same ones who stood in the crowd and hollered, "Crucify him," now went to watch to see what was going to happen. But they had no faith. They didn't believe Jesus. They didn't believe in Jesus. And sometimes we have that problem. Just like every story that comes up. I thought about the story of the prodigal son, right? We always ask, well, which son would you identify with? At different parts of our life, we identify with both of them. And at different parts of our journey, our life, we identify with all three parts of the people who were there to see at the crucifixion. You see, sometimes we lack faith. Sometimes we kind of turn away. Sometimes we want to see the spectacle. A guy told me one day after Mass, because I talked about the Eucharist, he said, it would be really neat. I said, what's that? He said, when the priest consecrates the Eucharist, if the church would shake. He said, I bet you the church would be full all the time. I said, but it wouldn't be believers. It would be people coming to see the spectacle. The second type of person was those who were there because of pain, right? The two guys who were crucified with Jesus, right? They're going through the same pain that Jesus was going through, but yet they mocked him, they ridiculed him. And then one of them had a conversion. You see, the problem with us is that sometimes when we feel pain or we have issues going on in our lives, we have to make that choice. Do I trust God? Do I trust in Jesus? Do I trust that He's going to be with me, to walk with me through whatever this journey is? Or do I turn away? You see, the bad thief, I guess you'd call him, because we call the other one the good thief. The bad thief was looking for a miracle, right? He didn't believe Jesus was God, but he said, hey, look, if you're the Son of God, get us down from here. He wanted to be healed of whatever it was. Chances are, if Jesus would have brought him down, he'd have went right back to the life that he led before. And he probably would have ended up in that same position again. But the other one had that transformation. The other one saw who Jesus is. He saw him as the King of the Jews. He saw him as the Son of God. And he asked for his forgiveness. I tell you, I like to watch videos, and there's a Protestant minister that talks about the good thief. And he says, he says, if I make it to heaven, he says, I want to ask that guy, how did you do it? He said, you didn't know theology. You were never baptized. You didn't live a good life. How did you get here? And he said, the only answer the guy would say is, because of the man. Because I asked him to forgive me. See, we have to remember that always, that the door to confessional is always open to us. The door is always open that we can go in and ask for forgiveness and be welcomed right back into the house, into the home. Whenever we lose that sight. The third type of spectator there at the crucifixion was the one that was there because of love. You know, we sit there and we think about what Mary went through watching her son being beaten and carrying his cross and falling and all of those things, and the jeers and the people in the crowd yelling and thinking about all of the good that he had done through his lifetime and the ministry and the healing and all of those things. Watching all of the people turn against him. Looking around and only seeing John, his disciple. Of course, John likes to put in there the disciple that he loved. But he was the only one there at the crucifixion. Everybody else had run away. And Mary kept all of these things in her heart. You know, it's amazing that from his beginning, right? So they go off to Bethlehem, and he's born in a manger. They didn't even have a decent place for him to be born. She knows who he is. The angel told her so. They bring him to the temple, and Simeon says, a sword will pierce you through. She lived with all of these things in her heart. But she loved him beyond all measure. You know, and sometimes, like I said, we have that love. We can say that, you know, I want to devote my life to Jesus. But sometimes I'm just like Peter. That when the time comes for me to be a witness, I deny him. And we know that Peter loved him. But we all stumble and fall. We all have those issues. We can, like I said, we can relate to just about everybody that was there that day of the crucifixion. We can relate to all of those people at one point or another in our lives. You see, but the key is that we have to come back. We have to be there and say, Lord, I'm sorry that I denied you. Lord, I'm sorry that I had no faith. I wanted to share with you, I read this the other day, and I thought it was kind of appropriate. It comes from C.S. Lewis, and he says to us, God whispers to us in our pleasure. He speaks to us in our conscience, and he shouts at us in our pain. He's trying to get our attention. He tries to keep our attention. But how often do we turn away? See, we have to ask ourselves today, in this point in my life, who am I as one of those spectators? Be honest with ourselves, and then make the adjustments that we need to make.